Gone were the flashing lights. The screaming fans were nowhere in sight. When Harry and Meghan touched down in Australia this week, it was meant to be a moment of pure triumph, a grand return to the very country where their royal journey first exploded in 2018. Yet as they stepped onto the tarmac in 2026, the air wasn't electric. It was eerie. No crowds pressed against the gates. No chaos erupted. No paparazzi tore through the streets of Melbourne chasing their convoy. Instead, they slipped into the country far too quietly, almost as if they were dodging the very spotlight they once commanded. Skipping the traditional photo ops, they rolled out in a hushed motorcade, leaving press and public alike wondering if the Sussex magic had finally faded. The entrance felt controlled, low-key, more corporate retreat than royal arrival. And it was only the beginning of a trip that would soon ignite the entire country in a fresh storm of controversy. To grasp why this feels so off, rewind 8 years. Back in 2018, Harry and Meghan were the ultimate power couple, newly married, glowing with the promise of a modern monarchy, and Australia was utterly obsessed. Crowds stacked 10 deep along the streets. The energy back then was wild, intense, almost primal. They weren't merely popular. They were untouchable symbols of a new era. The 2026 version of this tour feels like a ghost of that golden past. This time, no private jet. No government aircraft. They flew commercial, business class, on an ordinary flight out of Los Angeles. On the surface, it reads as humble, relatable, a quiet signal that they are one of us. But in the high-stakes world of public relations, no choice is ever that innocent. Every move is a message. The message they are broadcasting now is independence, even if that independence carries a brutal price tag. Yet even with the humble arrival, something felt deeply wrong from the very first second. The global buzz that usually trails them had been swapped out for a polite, cautious curiosity. That electric charge in the air? Vanished. In its place hung a single question that seemed to shadow them from the airport to their first stop. Who exactly are they now? They aren't working royals, yet they perform the same duties. They aren't simply celebrities, yet they sell tickets to their presence. This quasi-royal limbo is the tightrope they've chosen to walk. But as they were about to discover, walking a tightrope in front of a skeptical public is the toughest job on earth. And the first sign that everything had shifted wasn't buried in a headline. It was found in the silence of a hospital corridor. That silence, however, was about to grow deafening. Stepping into the Royal Children's Hospital in Melbourne for their first official engagement, all eyes locked onto them, hunting for that old spark that used to set rooms ablaze. What unfolded next was the kind of moment publicists have nightmares about. Instead of the roar of a crowd or a sudden burst of applause, there was only a strange, heavy stillness. As they walked through the doors, no wave of energy met them, just a soft, hesitant sigh from a handful of onlookers. Subtle as it was, it landed like a sledgehammer. In that single instant, the shift in public perception became impossible to deny. This wasn't 2018 anymore. Once, they were the untouchable future. Today, they are public figures scrambling to find their footing in a world that has moved on far quicker than they bargained for. Inside the hospital, Harry and Meghan did what they do best. They connected. Harry moved through the room with ease, crouching to meet children at eye level, asking about their treatments, their lives, their families. It was the version of him people still remember from his royal days, a man who genuinely knows how to make a vulnerable person feel seen. Meghan stayed close beside him, leaning into the weight of the moment, embracing patience and whispering gentle encouragement to families enduring their darkest hours. For everyone inside that room, the moments were real. A young patient pressed a bouquet into Harry's hands. Meghan told a little girl to keep being brave. These are the scenes that have always defined their public image, the moments that feel raw and impossible to dismiss. But step beyond those hospital walls, and the story flips entirely. While they bonded with patients inside, a very different conversation was already brewing across Australia. Critics and commentators had begun dissecting the why behind the visit. If they aren't working royals, why does this trip look exactly like a royal tour? Why the formal hospital visits? Why the carefully staged photos? That quiet high from the crowd wasn't just a drop in volume. It was a signal of pure uncertainty. The public no longer knows how to treat them. Are they guests of the state? Private citizens flying in for business? Or something else entirely, a brand cleverly draped in monarchy imagery to stay globally relevant? This ambiguity is precisely where the tension breeds. And that tension only deepened the second the world caught sight of what Meghan wore at her next stop. Because while the couple keeps trying to project service and empathy, the reality of their lifestyle keeps slamming into the frame. It's a relentless tug-of-war between the Duchess and the woman next door. And in Australia, that war was about to take a sharply controversial turn. Hugging a child in a hospital is one thing. Walking into a homeless shelter wearing an outfit that costs more than most people's monthly rent is another beast entirely. That was just the first of many contradictions waiting to be ripped wide open. The optics escalated the moment Meghan arrived at McAuley Community Services for Women in Melbourne, a place built to support survivors of domestic violence and homelessness, raw human struggle in its most unfiltered form. To the casual observer, the scene was powerful and pitch-perfect for a humanitarian. Meghan slipped on an apron, stepped into the kitchen, and helped prepare and serve lunch for the women inside. She smiled, moved through the space with ease, and looked entirely at home in the rhythm of community service. She even made a surprise appearance on MasterChef Australia, layering a touch of celebrity glamour over the day. It was the exact kind of imagery engineered to cement a reputation as a woman of the people. But the internet in 2026 is a very different beast than it was a decade ago. Within hours of those photos hitting the web, the Sussex sleuths had already dissected every thread of Meghan's outfit. As she ladled soup and spoke about lifting up the vulnerable, she was wearing a designer ensemble priced well over $1,000. For many, that single detail didn't just slip past. It became the entire story. The clash between a luxury wardrobe and a homeless shelter created a visual disconnect that detonated into a full-blown relatability debate. Critics fired back that the outfit screamed exclusivity and branding instead of genuine connection. Was she there to serve, or was she there for a photo op destined for the next Netflix documentary? This question of authenticity is the shadow that trails Meghan wherever she walks. In one breath, she's a grounded mother and entrepreneur. In the next, she's being marketed by Time and Vogue as one of the most influential women alive. In Australia, that double life felt razor-sharp. It's the quasi-royal trap in a single frame. You crave the prestige of the title and the freedom of a celebrity brand. But the moment you blend the two inside a charity space, it lands as tone-deaf. The MasterChef appearance only fed the feeling of a curated existence. It was fun, it was light, but it felt like a commercial for brand Meghan rather than a meaningful gesture toward the cause at hand. And this was only a preview of what Sydney had waiting. While Melbourne was framed around service, Sydney leaned hard into the monetization machine of the Sussex brand. The whispers about whether this was a tour of duty or a tour of profit were minutes away from boiling over. If a $1,000 outfit at a shelter rattled the public, just wait until you see the price tag attached to standing near the Duchess at a luxury beachfront hotel. But before we get into the wellness retreat, there's another story unfolding. Harry is testing out a brand new way to sell his truth. While Meghan worked the kitchens of Melbourne, Harry was prepping for an entirely different kind of stage. He headed to Melbourne Park to deliver the keynote at the InterEdge Psychosocial Safety Summit. This wasn't a soft charity speech. This was a high-level corporate event built around leadership and mental health in the workplace. For years, Harry has carved out a name for himself as a global voice on mental fitness, and this summit was his shot at proving he deserves a seat alongside top business leaders and policymakers. He walked onto the stage in a clean jacket and white shirt, looking every inch the seasoned professional speaker. Inside his 15-minute keynote, Harry made a bold play. He called for mental illness to be reclassified as mental injury. It's a powerful reframe, one that argues these struggles aren't permanent flaws but injuries waiting to be healed with the right support and culture. He cracked open his own past, confessing there were stretches where he felt lost, betrayed, and utterly powerless. He even reached back to the moment that shaped him forever, his mother's death just before his 13th birthday. He told the room that for years he didn't want the job, didn't want the role, didn't want the birthright. He wanted out of the goldfish bowl. It was raw. It was personal. To many in that audience, it landed as a powerful display of vulnerability. But here's where the truth gets uncomfortable. This summit wasn't a public service event. It was a commercial summit with tiered pricing. Tickets ranged from a few $100s to well over $2,000. Want to share oxygen with the Duke? You paid a premium for the privilege. That single fact has unleashed a growing wave of criticism that Harry is monetizing his own trauma. By unpacking his most painful memories at a ticketed event, he's essentially packaging his life story into a product. Critics keep firing back with the same question. If mental health is a human right, why does it cost thousands of dollars to hear a prince speak on it? This pay-to-play model of advocacy is tearing a serious rift through his public image. Even inside the room, the duality was impossible to miss. Meghan sat front row, watching her husband speak, projecting the picture of a devoted, supportive wife. Yet as the cameras flashed, the entire scene reeked of private organizers and corporate sponsors pulling the strings. This wasn't a Royal Foundation event. This was a straight business transaction. And this commercializing of their personal stories is exactly what's fueling the quasi-royal debate. They are leveraging the weight of their royal history to sell tickets to corporate summits. Brilliant as a business move, sure. But is it built to last? Or will the public eventually burn out on paying for a story they've already heard 100 times? That question was about to get a very expensive answer in Sydney. If the Melbourne summit raised eyebrows, the Her Best Life retreat in Sydney blew the roof clean off. This was Meghan's headline event, a 3-day luxury wellness weekend at the Intercontinental Sydney Coogee Beach. Not a charity walk. Not a hospital visit. This was a girls' weekend like no other, built for roughly 300 women willing to pay for the ultimate Sussex experience. The ticket prices were staggering. A standard pass began at $2,699. The VIP package soared to $3,199. For that, guests received yoga, sound healing, manifestation sessions, and the headline draw, a live in-person conversation with the Duchess herself. But there was a catch. And it was a big one. Leaked itineraries revealed that the organizers enforced a total ban on mobile phones and recording devices the moment Meghan's session began. The official reasoning? Keeping guests fully present. But the practical effect was something else entirely. Total control over her image. In an era ruled by instant social media, a blackout at a wellness retreat feels lifted straight from an old-school Hollywood playbook. It manufactures an aura of exclusivity and mystery, leaving paying guests feeling like initiates of a secret society. To everyone outside that bubble, though, it feels like one more barrier, one more way to commodify proximity to royalty. VIP guests didn't simply get a speech. They walked away with a group table photo alongside Meghan and a curated VIP goodie bag. This is where the line between Duchess and influencer evaporates completely. In the royal world, you don't pay for a photo with a family member. That access is a matter of public service. In the Sussex world, the same photo becomes a Tier 1 perk. The retreat also featured Dr. McAuley, a renowned therapist focused on connection and growth. Yet it's hard to preach connection when the entry fee dwarfs what most people earn in a month. It throws a blinding spotlight on a single question. Who is this best life actually for? Every woman, or only the ones who can drop $3,000 for a weekend? This pivot into the luxury wellness lane is a major pillar of Meghan's new brand, As Ever, which centers on hospitality and lifestyle. By headlining this retreat, she's signaling a shift away from the traditional humanitarian lane straight into the lifestyle mogul territory ruled by names like Paltrow. But Paltrow doesn't carry a royal title. Meghan does. And using that title to sell luxury weekends is what has critics, and possibly the palace, absolutely furious. It feels like a quiet rebranding of the monarchy into a high-end subscription service. As the retreat guests sipped green juices in Sydney, the rest of Australia was already tallying the cost. Before the trip could close, one final stop loomed, and it carried the heaviest weight of history. Bondi Beach. The location is iconic for the Sussexes because it staged one of their most unforgettable 2018 moments, when they sat in an anti-bad vibes circle with local surfers. But in 2026, the visit arrived wrapped in a far more somber tone. Bondi had recently been struck by a horrific terrorist attack, and Harry and Meghan arrived to meet with survivors and first responders at the Surf Bathers Lifesaving Club. It was their chance to showcase the serious weight of their work, honoring those who had lived through an unthinkable nightmare. Yet even on the sand, the security bubble was impossible to miss. In 2018, they strolled through the crowd shaking hands and snapping selfies with strangers. In 2026, the entire area was locked down. The security footprint was massive, with reports describing local police and private teams forging a ring of steel around the couple. This shift from accessible to fortified is the visual signature of their new life. They want to be part of the community, but they are increasingly walled off from it by the very real, very expensive need for protection. It's a paradox in motion. The more they try to connect, the more their security requirements scream just how different they really are. Watching them at Bondi, the 2018 glow had clearly been replaced by a sharper 2026 focus. They are older now. They are parents. They have weathered years of public warfare. Gone are the wide-eyed newcomers. In their place stand battle-hardened public figures. As they stood beside survivors, however, the conversation wasn't only about tragedy. It was quietly about who was footing the bill for that ring of steel on the sand. Because while the couple insists this trip is privately funded, the sight of dozens of Australian police officers stationed across Bondi told local taxpayers a very different story. This is the central conflict of the entire tour. You can have the most meaningful exchange with a survivor, but the moment the public feels strong-armed into funding your private visit, the message gets buried under the math. And the math in Australia right now is looking ugly for the Sussexes. A nationwide cost-of-living crisis has left people hypersensitive to public spending. What once registered as a royal perk is now landing as a taxpayer burden. That frustration was about to find a very organized outlet. While Harry and Meghan moved between hospitals and retreats, a digital uprising was building steam on change.org. A petition had been launched with a single, blunt demand. No taxpayer money for the Sussex visit. By the midpoint of their tour, the petition had exploded past 45,000 signatures. This isn't a handful of trolls rattling keyboards. This is a substantial slice of the Australian public airing organised fury. The petition called out the brutal pressures Australians are enduring right now, climbing grocery bills, record-high fuel prices, and mortgage stress, and argued that public resources must be deployed responsibly and applied fairly. The backlash hinges on a security loophole. Harry and Meghan are technically in Australia on a private business trip, not an official state visit. Yet because of their profiles and titles, the host country still feels pressured to extend some level of public safety and police support. To many Australians, this looks like the couple wanting the cake and devouring it too. They want the freedom to chase paid speaking gigs and sell wellness retreats, but they still want the government to bankroll the security that usually accompanies a working royal. It's a financial grey zone that has detonated into a full-blown PR disaster. The government has tried to stay neutral, but the pressure is closing in fast. People are demanding clear confirmation that not a single official resource has been spent on this visit. The fact that this is unfolding in 2026, a year where economic anxiety is at an all-time peak, makes the timing especially brutal. In 2018, no one cared about the cost because the show was so good. In 2026, the show feels more like a business venture, and nobody enjoys covering someone else's business expenses. This financial firestorm is the single biggest threat to their brand, because it strikes at their core claim that they are independent and standing on their own 2 feet. If they truly are independent, critics argue, then every police officer, every road closure, every motorcade should come straight out of their own pockets. But the Sussexes have walked themselves into a trap. They are too famous to go without security, yet too polarizing for the public to willingly pay for it. This deadlock is what twisted the quasi-royal tour into a quasi-royal humiliation in the eyes of many. And as the signatures on that petition keep climbing, the message to the couple is unmistakable. The Australian fair go doesn't extend to bankrolling a duke's private marketing tour.